Can you guys see that? All right. So today, this session, we're going to be talking about supervising the SB 123, SB 123 plus, and all of RAFT offenders. And as Elliot's already told everybody, I'm Trish Beck. We've got Spence Cohen with OJA here, Jessica Doltmeyer from KDOC, and then, of course, Elliot, the director. I just basically want to give you a little bit of history. Some of you know this, some of you don't, but SB 123 was approved back in 2003 with a legislative session implemented in 2004. The goal, of course, is to treat those nonviolent offenders, reserving the prison for those offenders that really did commit those serious violent crimes. SB 123 is basically focusing on drug abuse treatment for up to 18 months for the term of the probation. Okay, so we have SB 123, which is the basic, simple possession of drug users that get sentenced. We do provide the 18 months of treatment, and it is usually supervised by community corrections. And so then we have the RAFT program, which is the Recovery from Addiction Funded Treatment. It was introduced in 2002. That is basically for people offered a diversion on drug charges, but also allowed being funded for 18 months worth of SB 123 treatment. Then we have the SB 123 Plus. That is a 2023 expansion, allowing those offenders sentenced to non-drug crimes, and they are available for the substance use disorder treatment funded by the SB 123. I know y'all are aware, but let's go over our partners once again. We are one big happy family. We've got Caroline, who we just heard from, Beth, Emily, Alicia. They're wonderful. They're our third-party payer for all claims through SB 123. Some of you probably utilize them for block grant and apps funding and all that stuff too. But we also have Department of Corrections, and these would be our ISOs who pretty much supervise those offenders. I know that we struggle between calling them clients and offenders. I tend to call them offenders because they're offenders first, so whatever. But the supervisor, or yeah, the ISO is basically those people that strictly supervise those offenders as they walk through the SB 123 program. And we have OJA. This is Court Services, also known as the CSO. They would handle all of the pre-sentence risk need assessments and then coordinate some of the SUD assessments to determine eligibility. And they also may supervise the RAFT diverties. And then we also have KDADs, who we heard from earlier, Stephanie and all their staff. They aren't really directly partners with the SB 123, but we do overlap a lot with policies and requirements. So we're in constant communication with them. Then, of course, we have our treatment providers, and they are all certified by the Sentencing Commission. So the treatment providers, they play a very critical role in our program. To date, we have about 130 treatment providers. And years ago, Department of Corrections took over certifying all of our providers, but recently in 2023, the Sentencing Commission now is the one that plays the role of certifying providers to be in our SB 123 program. And then, of course, once they are certified, they are entered into Athena so that all of the community corrections people can see who our providers are and what they offer. We do have a statewide provider list for all of our certified treatment providers. That is on our website. I'm going to go over our website a little bit later and I'll kind of show you where that is. So, who's eligible? Everybody wants to know. You have to be a Kansas resident. You have to be lawfully present in the United States. You have to be convicted of a felony possession or distribution within appropriate sentence guidelines, or granted, or I should say, and granted diversion for a felony possession, RAFT. They may receive multiple opportunities to participate in funded treatment, meaning it could be the SB 123 program, it could be a diversion, it could be the SB 123 plus, it could be numerous things. They also must meet eligibility requirements through the SASE, the risk needs assessments, and then also the LSCMI or the WRNA.
And Trish, sorry, will you go back to that slide real quick?
Sure.
I just wanted to point out that with the SB 123 plus, it's not just the felony possession or distribution charges. There are now people who may have non-drug charges that are eligible for funding through SB 123 plus. So that would be some of the lower level felonies, forgery, thefts, and things like that. So just wanted to make sure that was on everybody's radar as well.
Yes, thank you, Elliot. Had I read the whole entire slide, it would say for non-drug. All right. So I kind of wanted to split out just give you a visual of the different forms when it comes to pre-sentencing versus post-sentencing. So if you're dealing with a pre-sentence SB 123 person, the forms that you kind of have to pay attention to would be the eligibility form. It's also known as the respondent form. That is the link that either CSOs or ISOs will actually fill out, and it goes directly to Carolyn. Hang on a second here. Sorry, I'm trying not to catch a cold. So if I mute myself and cough, you'll know why. We also have the CPA and the SASE and the SUD assessment summary form. Those are basically the pre-sentence forms. Hold on. My bad. Okay, sorry about that. For post-sentence, the only thing that's not included would be the eligibility form. And that is mainly because post-sentence information is information that you can get in Athena. So these forms are all the same for post-sentence and pre-sentence, other than the eligibility form. So a CPA is the client placement agreement. Anyone can generate it. It's just a matter of communication, whether the treatment provider does it or the supervising officer. There are 3 pages. And there will either be a pre-sentence assessment CPA or a post-sentence CPA, not both. And then after the initial assessment CPA, there will also be a treatment services CPA. And there may be additional ones depending on if there's a different location or different treatment provider. The CPA for SB 123 has a blue star on it. The RAFT CPAs have a green dot. I'll show you that when we cover the website. So as we said earlier in this day, We kind of like to think of the CPA as the history of this offender during its treatment. It tells the story of start to finish. So if you keep it in the offender's file and with the treatment provider in their file, it should pretty much say the same thing. But what you're wanting to do is plan on several CPAs, plan on it per that offender's treatment, especially if they get a second case. But there is a separate CPA for the assessment, as I said before. And then another one, if you get a new provider or change of location for that same treatment. Or if they're recommended a new modality that hasn't been mentioned on a previous CPA. And then, of course, you'll get a new CPA if he gets a brand new case. So only modalities on CPA should be marked if that particular treatment provider at that location will provide that treatment. Any questions on that? Well, Mavis, you don't have any questions because you've been on here all day. Anybody else? All right, I'm going to go on that. So here's a CPA, just to give you a big picture of it all. There's a lot of confusion with CPAs. And as I said before, it doesn't really matter who creates this. Sometimes the officer wants to do it and be in charge, and that's fine. Just make sure that both the treatment provider and the officer knows who's going to do it and be on the same page. Sentencing date, that of course is obvious what it is. But if you're going to have a pre-sentence assessment, that's not going to be known, so of course you won't put that. All right, so I'm going to start over. So if you have a pre-sentence assessment, you're not going to know the sentencing date. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. You're not going to know the actual treatment admission date here because they haven't started treatment. And therefore, you won't know the expiration date. But what you will know is when you're going to go into agreement in this blue box or blue circle here, you're going to know the court case number, and you're going to know the day that you talk to the treatment provider and the referring officer. Hey, let's talk about getting this person an assessment, whether it's pre or post. And let's talk about it on this such a day between you and me. And then you will mark only a pre-sentence assessment or a post-sentence assessment. Okay, that's your first CPA. After that, let's say we're done with the assessment, and now they're going to go into treatment. You're going to have another CPA. This time you're going to know what the sentencing date is. So you're going to put that in there. That will never change. You're also going to know when treatment starts, when they actually start treatment, sit down in a chair and do some work. That is the actual treatment admission start date. It is not the assessment date unless they actually start treatment right after that. But and then the expiration date is 18 months after this actual treatment start date. None of these boxes right up here, these 7 boxes, will never change once treatment starts. Okay, because you're going to know the KBI number, you're going to know the court case number. Toads, some people know their number. It's in the individual ID section in Athena, if you ever want to look. It starts with a 6 and it has 7 numbers. So Athena number is that 10-digit number that starts with a 2. So if they have started treatment and you've got that assessment and the treatment provider basically is saying, hey, they need to start off at intermediate residential and then whatever they have marked and suggest, that's great. That's what needs to be marked on there. But when you do sign that agreement back here, when you have signed this agreement to get, this individual matched up with this treatment provider, it's a good idea to go ahead and sign this same date. Get signatures, if you would, please. It's pretty important. And the third page, always check for insurance. We are the payer of last resort. We did take off the offender signature in case anybody hasn't seen that, Kevin. And so that'll make it a lot easier for everybody. That was holding up a lot of CPAs, making it kind of frustrating for everybody. But our new one is also posted. So this information here is very important, and it should be checked on periodically. Whether it's with the treatment provider or the supervising officer, because insurance can change. It can, end, or it can begin at any time. So it doesn't hurt to ask, hey, has your insurance changed? If so, make that information known to both parties, the supervising officer and the treatment provider.
Trish,
Yes.
Kathy Crockett has a question.
Hi, Kathy. What's up?
Hey, Trish, I know I talked to you yesterday, but I need to clarify something.
Okay.
On the I have an offender that was sentenced on October 4th, but she had already, prior to getting sentenced, her attorney got her into treatment. She's already been going through MIR, and it's they've already done, all the assessments and all that stuff. She's just in outpatient treatment now. So, and I know when I talked to you that we did the CPA to begin on October 4th, but to do the Senate bill treatment, do they have to have an assessment on file? Will she need to have one, or can they just do it as the outpatient treatment? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Well, go ahead, Gwen. I see you're chewing at the bit there.
No, it's fine. Go ahead.
No, seriously.
I just unmuted in case you needed me.
Nope, go.
Okay. Couple of things with that, Kathy, and the treatment providers know this, that per licensing, first of all, per licensing with KDADS, that client needs to have an assessment in their file, right? The real slick thing is if they were the ones who did the original assessment, right? So then that becomes, pretty seamless for them to just kind of update it, get the CPA, do, that kind of thing. So it can be a little trickier to navigate if they were not the ones that, did the assessment. But they still have, in order to put that client in another funding stream of treatment, they still, per licensing with KDADS, they need to have that assessment in the file anyhow, right? And we always tell treatment providers, listen, if you are meeting the standards with those assessments and that client's funding stream changes to Senate bill, it should not put you all in a head spin, because it should be, all the same, assessment requirements and that kind of thing. So it would just be some few extra pieces of paper. And I think I mentioned that earlier as well. So,
all right.
Did that answer your question?
That answers my question. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Hey, Trish, Gwen, this is Mavis. Hey, I just want to make sure we're still doing this right, because I know I've had people ask me about this. They get sentenced on Senate bill. A few months later, and they're using that current case as Senate bill. A few months later, they go down the road, they pick up another case, get sentenced on that one Senate bill. So as a CSO, we should notify you guys that to close out the old case and to restart the new case.
Yes.
Yeah. The treatment provider will need to know that that has occurred as well, Mavis, because there's going to be a different case, and some kind of technical billing stuff and that kind of thing for them. So, but yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure, just a shout out for everybody because we've been doing a lot of it, having to close out one case and restart the new one.
And the one thing, yeah, just make sure you let us know because
I do.
Caroline won't have a clue, as we discussed this last time. And so I need to let them know to cancel that first case and start the new case because they really don't look at case numbers much. So
Yeah. That's why I usually send you an email.
I know. And and
Daily
that's good
basis.
because that's why I've got the information. I just pretty much forward it to them and I give them information from Athena and it works perfect. Smooth.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for bringing it up. Any other questions while we're on this? Okay. So when it comes to SUD assessments, that would be the drug and alcohol, the substance use disorder assessment with the treatment provider. So if court services is referring them, or yeah, if they've got this offender and it's before sentencing, court services will do the LSCMI or the WRNA. And then some of them will do the SASE, some of them will not. And Spence, you can chime in anytime you want. Some of them have been trained, and some are still getting trained to do the SASE, and that's why I say that. But if court services is conducting the SASE, make sure it's high probability before you refer them to a treatment provider to do an assessment. If it's low probability, they do not qualify for SB 123. So just make sure of that. And if, excuse me, if court services is not doing the SASE, then when they do refer this offender to a treatment provider, make sure you inform this treatment provider to conduct the SASE before the assessment to be sure that they are eligible. And then, of course, at that time, you need to talk, okay, who's going to do the CPA? And then the one thing I do want to talk about is the eligibility form, also known as the respondent form that is being submitted to Carolyn. There's lots of different ways to do this. We are finding that if the eligibility form is done, because when we first started doing this, we told everybody, you've got to get it done. You've got to get it done early on. And now we're realizing that, and maybe it may be too early to do. You can still do it that way, but if that offender doesn't show up for the assessment and the date on the eligibility form, it's hard for the treatment provider to find this person to bill in Provider Connect for Carolyn. So I guess that what I'm saying is if you're doing an eligibility form, share with that treatment provider what date you are using on that eligibility form, because that's how they're going to find it in Provider Connect. Realistically, ideally, we would like to use the date of the assessment. So if you don't know it, it might be even beneficial to wait until that treatment provider has actually done that assessment. And then they can notify you and say, okay, go for it. Do the eligibility date. Here's the date of the assessment. And then get your CPA rolling and everything's taken care of. That's in a perfect world. I realize there's a lot of questions around it and confusion. And bottom line is there is a way to print this form. I did a mock form the other day and print it. It's just to your benefit, because then that way, if the treatment provider can't seem to find something in Provider Connect regarding a pre-sentence assessment, you have that form to see what date you actually put on that, and then they can look it up in Provider Connect using that date. So that's probably confusing. Anybody got any questions with that? I'm sure there are. Wow. Okay. Okay. So pre-sentence, if court services isn't going to do this, and sometimes court services will just do the LSCMI, WRNA, and SASE and hand it over to court services. I don't know how it's done. It's done differently all over. So whatever is working out there, if community corrections does get this and needs to refer this offender to a treatment provider, basically ask that CSO, has the SASE, WRNA, and LSMI been done? You know, and have you already scheduled an assessment with a treatment provider? You know, have you guys already done a CPA?
Trish, I do
yeah.
have a question about that.
Go for it.
So we were under the impression that because when you have in your thing here about who's providing the CPA, I thought the referring agency needed to do that because I've always wondered because I'm only referring for the substance abuse assessment and then I'm out of the picture forever of all billing and all of that. So I didn't know why I was signing that CPA, putting my email address and all of that because I'm just referring. But we've been doing it, so I don't know where that is across the board, but is that correct?
Yeah, if you're the one that's referring them to the treatment provider, then you're the one that is making this contract right here.
Well, but they're going to be going to community corrections after that.
True, but another CPA is going to have to be made.
Okay.
You see what I mean? So if there's only one CPA for an assessment, once they go to community corrections after they're sentenced, then another one's going to be done anyway. But it really, as long as I guess it doesn't hurt to communicate, bottom line. Does that make sense, Kevin?
That makes sense. I just thought initially that would just, and I think it was mentioned this morning earlier about the different one per agency as far as when you transferred one out, but I guess I didn't, excuse me, know that it made a difference between us on the pipeline in the front end, I guess.
I think you might be confusing transferring per agency. Do you think you're thinking of treatment provider if they are transferring location?
Well, I know we talked about the transferring between agencies earlier today, but like
Okay.
someone used the community corrections if it went from one to the other or whatever. But as far as because we weren't when we first started doing this, we didn't do this. We weren't aware of it. And then the treatment providers would says, well, where's the CPA at? And we're like, what?
Right.
And then they sent it to us and said, well, you got to complete this, and so.
This has been a work in progress, Kevin, so I'm really glad you're a patient man.
Well, it works, but we're doing it. So
Yeah. And I think we're all figuring out new ways, better ways to handle the situation. As long as we're communicating and asking these questions, if you're not going to be referring them, other than if you're not going to refer an offender to a treatment provider, but you're going to do the LSCMI and the WRNA and then pass it over to community corrections, it's best to just communicate and say, hey, I haven't done a CPA. I haven't done anything like that. All I've done is this and this. You guys need to do the CPA or whatever. Does that make sense?
yeah.
You don't sound too happy about that.
Well, you're touching on something that we probably aren't going to get onto today as far as who's going to be, because I think it sounds like there's going to be a variety of whether people are sending them back over to community corrections or whether we're taking care of them all in-house with community or court services or whatever, but that's probably a different conversation.
And we may touch on that later.
Okay.
Yeah, we may. And if not, the fact that we have Spence and Jessica on this call during this presentation, maybe we can. Who knows? It could be a different conference. I don't know.
I know. Trish, there's a couple more questions in the chat.
All right. What are the questions? I can't see the chat. Let's see.
I think I'm getting to the questions in the chat, so you guys can
You're getting to them?
I
Okay.
think I am, yeah, so.
Okay. All right. Well, then I will keep going. Norm, doesn't matter who does it. Okay, I'll keep going. Is this where I left off? Let's take a look. Yes, it is. Okay, so eligibility form. I kind of touched on that before. This is that link that is done for pre-sentence assessments or for a RAFT diversion. Yeah. So Carolyn, our third-party payer, gets their information from Athena in order to pay our treatment providers. Okay. But everything in Athena is post-sentence. That's where this eligibility form comes into play. And that's why we need this form filled out. It's just got basic information about this offender and the case. And it provides enough information for Carolyn to create a pre-sentence segment in the Carolyn system so that the treatment providers can go in there and get paid for that pre-sentence assessment. So it's always a good idea to try to use the drug and alcohol assessment date, if known. I would say you're going to get that link only from the Sentencing Commission. So if you don't already have it, reach out to me. When you're dealing with an eligibility form for RAFT, you use the date of the diversion. If it's SB 123 pre-sentence, then if you know the date of the assessment, use it. And if it changes or what have you, then that's a communication that you'll need to have with treatment providers so that they know what date that is on the eligibility date form. There is an option to print this form. I highly recommend that you do that. That way you know what day is on this form if a treatment provider cannot find this in Provider Connect. So the SASSIs, if you are administering a SASSI, keep in mind it is a screening tool for lifetime of the client. We do need treatment providers need the scoring page to get paid. I would say keep it in their file. I would just say keep all that information in the file and share it with, treatment providers and what have you. If it is a high probability score, then they're eligible for any of the SB 123 programs. If they are eligible, of course, then they're eligible for 18 months worth of treatment. And that is as long as they are on supervision. So if their probation ends prior to the 18 months, I think there's an option to extend supervision to let them finish treatment or whatever. That's out of my, it's not for me to say. I just know we offer payment up to 18 months. If they do score low on the SASSI, no need for an assessment. They do not qualify for SB 123 funded treatment. Although, even if they do score low on the SASSI, doesn't mean they can't get an assessment. It's just that we won't fund it, but wouldn't hurt for the treatment provider to get an assessment anyway for future, treatment, hopefully, that they will have. Here's what a SASSI looks like, a SASSI scoring page. I've only highlighted the areas that are important. Name, assessment date, or test date, I should say. Put in the numbers, do the graph. Please circle somehow, note whether it's, circle, draw in the arrow, what have you, if they're high or low. Mark all these on the right. And of course, share with the treatment provider with the ROI. I see the comments are really, there's a lot of comments. Do I need to stop and answer something?
I think I've got all the questions answered. There was a situation brought up by Brittany Alvarez, and I know Trish, you and I talked about this when it came up. So Brittany, I don't know if you want to mention that, or I can just read your comment from the chat. That's up to you.
Can you hear me?
Barely.
Can you hear me now? Maybe?
Try it. We'll see.
What about now?
It's just muffled. Unless it's my cold. I don't know.
No, I can just read your comment from the chat, and then you can let us know in the chat if I missed anything. So Brittany says that she had a really unique situation. That's probably good to mention because she did reach out to Trish about it. So she had somebody that was granted diversion a few months ago, but then was sentenced on a previous case to community corrections and given Senate bill treatment. So they were on RAFT diversion, and then on a previous case before the diversion was given, were sentenced to Senate bill treatment through community corrections. So of course, by the time Brittany got it, she didn't know if she needed to do the Carillon form or what. So we kind of talked it through and ultimately decided not to have her do the eligibility form, and we let the community corrections case kind of take precedent or take over and just continued on with Senate bill funding. So, that's one of those kind of tricky situations that come up. There's so many kind of unique things that can come up when you're dealing with this kind of stuff. So that's a really good example and just goes to show, if you have those questions, please do just reach out to us because a lot of times we have to talk our way through it and kind of figure it out. So when those things come up, just like Brittany did, reach out to us and we'll help you get it sorted out.
Definitely. Good question. Another thing that's important to realize is that when you're going from a RAFT diversion case and then they revoke and they go and they now have been eligible to be an SB 123 offender, the risk need scores are different between RAFT and SB 123. So it's important to do the LSCMI and or the WRNA to make sure they qualify again, to make sure they qualify for the appropriate program.
And Trish, we got another question in the chat. I'm going to read it out and I can try to answer it. You might have to correct me, or one of you or Gwen. So Serena wants to know if the ISO has filed for revocation, is the client still eligible for SB 123 funding? And I believe the answer is yes, but perhaps I'm wrong.
So filed for revocation, and are they still eligible for SB 123 funding? Well, does that mean that I guess maybe I don't understand what the revocation is. I mean, did they get a new case, or are they going to jail? What's happening with the revocation?
Yeah, the revocation in a sense on community corrections, yes, they would still be eligible for Senate bill funding.
Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you, Jessica. See, that's why sometimes it takes a village to answer a Senate bill question sometimes. So.
Definitely.
But now you do have to watch on that if you have one client, because we have it all the time, where we filed for a bench warrant because the client ran. He had started treatment. Client ran. Client shows up almost 20 months later. SB 123 funding. is no more because they started treatment
Right.
and they've passed that 18-month time frame.
Mhm.
Unless they get picked up on a new case and get sent a bill again, which
True.
happens all the time.
Yes. All right. All right, I'm going to move on then. Thank you. All right, we're talking about the approved modalities and cost caps, and I mentioned this just because it's important for supervising officers to at least know that they do exist. You know, I don't have a clinical background whatsoever. Gwen is my hero, and so is Elliot. But we do have approved treatment modalities and cost caps. Providers do have a clinical background and the education to understand levels of care. They understand that they do need to follow these minimums and maximum services that we have that are approved. So that's just something to be aware of. They are on our website. If you ever want to look them over, get familiar with them. Doesn't mean you have to, you know, memorize them, but just understand that they do exist. Okay. Drug and alcohol assessments. Substance use disorder, 1 per case. Okay, that doesn't mean 1 pre-sentence and 1 post-sentence. It means 1 per case. Updated assessments or clinical update only occur if the offender is in treatment and needs a higher level of care. I know that a lot of times you'll get, you know, anybody outside of the, you know, the officer will say they need another assessment. Could be the judge, could be anybody, could be the DA. But if they've already had an assessment, we're not going to pay for a second one. So keep in mind that an update can happen from the, you know, the original treatment provider, but then they can, or if they need a higher level of care. Let's see, what does it say? Oh, if they get a new case, then, and they're already in treatment, they don't necessarily need another assessment. We will pay for another assessment, but it's not necessary if they're in treatment already. But I would say just notify us for some guidance if you really kind of want a clearer picture on that. And as always, communicate with everybody. Make sure we're all on the same page. And if all possible, if you could enter any SB 123 details into Chronos, that way, whether an ISO leaves or, you know, maybe the client gets moved to a different ISO or whatever, everybody can have the same information or keep it in a file or something. There are times when I've had to go into Chronos to try and dissect, you know, the process with an ISO. And so we've looked through Chronos, and if there's better information in there, it might be easier in case there's no notes in the file. So that would be just a recommendation. I'll let Jessica touch on that later. And remember, if the assessment does not recommend treatment, the offender should be referred to substance use disorder education. Keep in mind that is on the assessment summary form, or actually, yeah, that and the CPA, but we don't pay for it. It is paid by the offender. All right. We are all one, okay, when it comes to this program. We are all here for the offender, sentencing commission, supervising officers, treatment providers, and our Carolyn, who's the pair of all the treatment providers. If we could all just keep the communication open from start to finish, that's from pre-sentence to discharge of probation, I think it's going to be a really good, easy flow. just try to collaborate with everybody. We administer the programs, we manage the funding, we monitor the utilization, certified coaches, and we do pay for the providers. We don't actually pay for the providers, but we pay for Carolyn to pay for the providers. Carolyn is also manages our invoicing and organizes the billing and eligibility data. But if we can kind of communicate with everybody, it is very beneficial and makes things very easy. Guess what, Spence? I'm gonna hand it over to you.
Okay. Hey everybody, my name is Spence Cohen. As they've alluded to, then I'm the court services specialist for the Office of Judicial Administration. So I'm gonna just briefly go over, this is gonna be repeat information for all of you officers out there, but hopefully some of you can find some of this information just good about what court services does in general. So kind of a step back from treatment for a second. So we do fall under court services, falls under the judicial branch. We supervise juveniles, adults convicted of misdemeanors and felonies. And we also have officers that do work with child in need of care cases as well as some domestic work. Our officers supervise clients ranging from low risk to very high risk. However, just for felony cases, we're going to be supervising, depending on the assessment, the medium to moderate and low risk. And as Jessica will talk about, obviously you ISOs will know that you supervise the high and moderate or medium. Now I'm confusing my language for the WARNA. So, and again, clients with misdemeanors, they only have county jail sentences, while those that are going to community corrections, convicted of a felony, will have a Department of Corrections sentence. We also do supervise some RAFT cases throughout the state. RAFT diversions, per statute, which is listed there, that a memorandum of understanding has to be completed with the chief judge or the district or the community correctional services to provide the supervision for RAFT. So that's a district by district decision on who supervises RAFT cases. Trish mentioned a little bit ago that the criteria is a little different for RAFT cases than it is for felony convictions. Diversions are the ranges for assessments are a little bit lower. For the WARNA, it's mid-range of moderate to very high. LSCMI is medium to very high. And then again, the SASE, and that's what qualifies the client for the SASE. And then again, it's the same as any other Senate bill case. The SASE does need to score high. Trish mentioned this just a little bit ago, that if supervising a RAFT case and they do get revoked, just like I mentioned, the eligibility, the scores are different between RAFT and what is necessary for felony conviction cases. So we just need to ensure that the assessments are still reflecting the correct scores when they move from diversions into a felony conviction. This is the placement criteria. I know our court services and ISO officers will all know these, but this basically just is a breakdown to show you the difference of what the assessment scales look like. And I mentioned a little bit ago, you can see on the bottom that the WARNA has some different language than the LSCMI, so I get these confused often, that the WARNA is low, moderate, medium, high, while the LSCMI goes from low, medium to high. So they have slightly different language in those assessments. But again, the criteria is listed here on this page, and I know that can be found on the Senate or on the Kansas Sentencing Commission website. You can go ahead, Trish.
Can't find there we go. Sorry.
For convictions, court services is doing the pre-sentence portion, or does the pre-sentence investigation for the courts. This is when the Senate bill eligibility is identified. mentioned this several times already throughout the presentation, and I just talked about it on our male and female clients have different assessments, and that shows the scores that need to be attained on those assessments for them to be eligible for the next step, which is the SASE. So once they reach that criteria for the risk needs assessment, if they're high or meet the criteria, though, that's when SASE shall be completed. Um, Again, they must score high on drug, non-drug, and RAFT clients, or on the SASE to be eligible for treatment. We'll talk just a little bit. I know Trish mentioned that it's kind of done throughout the state a little bit differently, district to district. We are working on a process. I've been working with Jeff Buttrick at KDOC with Community Corrections on implementing a new process along with the Sentencing Commission so that we're all doing everything statewide the same. I'm hopeful that we will have everything lined up by January 1st of this coming year, where court services will do the risk need assessment, then they will do the SASE if eligible, and then refer the case to Community Corrections, who will set up the actual treatment portion of it, set up the actual drug and alcohol evaluation. So we're still working on that policy and hammering out all the details. We are getting, we've got trainings coming up to train another about 100 of our court services officers very soon in the next few weeks for SASE. So we are moving forward with that process, and hopefully that will help streamline everybody statewide and make this process for everybody a little bit easier. On the PSI itself, our court services officers will mark the appropriate reasons on the face sheet if the client's not eligible, if they're high risk. On the risk needs but low risk, we just mark that appropriate box on the PSI that they didn't meet criteria. If they do qualify for Senate Bill 123 and a SASE is completed on the PSI for cost, we will mark the fee of $175. And then we need to know, that's when we refer obviously to have the drug and alcohol evaluation completed. If they do still qualify and treatment is recommended, or yeah, and that's recommended. Then at that point, we will also mark the fee of $125 for a total of $130. If there's no treatment recommended by the substance abuse provider, then we will only be marking the $175. So I know there's confusion about that occasionally. So hopefully that'll clear things up. And that's my short portion. I was trying to be fast and mindful of time. So Jessica.
Thank you, Spence. Any questions that anybody might have for Spence? You'll look over here. Okay, Elliot, I guess you've been paying attention and there's nothing. Okay, cool. Jessica, would you like to move forward with this? Maybe tell anybody a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Jessica Doltmeyer. I work for the Kansas Department of Corrections in the Community-Based Services Division. So my team and I provide support and technical assistance to the various community corrections agencies across the state. Next slide. Thank you so much. So, oh, okay. This is the old version. So apologies. I will go with my version here. So KDOC provides oversight of community corrections to ensure they meet their obligations as it applies to Senate Bill 123 specific standards. Supervision of Senate Bill clients include adhering to contact requirements set forth in KDOC standards that community corrections is familiar with. Next slide.
Do you want me to get up the your latest version? I can.
It's okay.
You sure?
Yep.
All right, I'll go to the next.
All right, so documentation of all supervision activities shall be entered in Athena. When you are creating an admission for a client who's not already in Athena, one of the three identifiers, either their social, FBI number, or KBI number, is required to be entered in order for the record to actually save in Athena. If you have the KBI number, please enter it as this is required for Senate bill funding. If the KBI number is acquired at a later date, the supervision officer needs to go back and enter that KBI number in the individual ID tab in order for the client to be approved for Senate bill funded treatments. Now, if the client already exists in Athena, please some due diligence would be to go and double check and make sure that the KBI number is there and it is accurate and present. All Senate Bill 123 pre-sentence cases should be entered in Athena. This includes adding the offenses of the case as well. Recently, you may have received emails from DOC regarding this, so just a friendly reminder going forward to please enter pre-sentence Senate bill cases and enter their offense information as well. Users can edit existing offense records on open cases in Athena if you need to go back in and change the statute or the number of counts upon conviction. Now, if the resulting conviction is such that you outright need to delete an offense altogether because the charge, say, was dismissed, KDOC help desk ticket will need to be created for that. And just as an aside, if court cases are closed without offense information being entered in Athena, that case will not be counted in the agency's closure data. So when we look at data from that standpoint, those don't get counted. So it's very important that we're entering in the offense information.
So Jessica, I have a question. When you say all pre-sentence cases should be entered into Athena, will they know at any time, will they know the sentencing date, or will they just go ahead and enter that information without it?
If they know it, they would enter it. If not, they wouldn't.
Okay, and that's fine. I've seen it both ways, but I was just curious because a lot of people have said, well, I don't know the sentencing date, so I shouldn't put it in, or they haven't been sentenced, so I shouldn't put it in. So I was just curious. Okay.
Yeah, cool. I'd say similar to your CPA form, how you were discussing how if you don't know the sentence date, don't put it on there. Same thing with this. If they don't have it, you wouldn't enter that in Athena.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So once a case becomes a Senate bill post-sentence conviction, users will need to go in and update the relevant fields in Athena inside the court case record. And that includes the status reason, case type, sentence type, their probation duration, and probation start date. So I know it's easy to do once you fill out all the information, and after sentencing, we need to be sure that we're going back in and updating these fields in Athena, please. Users shall also complete fields in Athena which may not have been applicable while they were in a pre-sentence status. So some of those fields, not limited to these, but they are sentence date, departure, criminal history, controlling sentence, and order box. A good rule of thumb is to always review the general tab in Athena in its entirety to ensure that the fields are complete and current. It's important that we enter as much information as possible in Athena and not limit ourselves to only entering the mandatory fields. As part of the agreement with the Sentencing Commission and DOC, treatment providers receive payment for services provided to Senate bill clients, and they agree to adhere to confidential releases of information forms between all parties. So we do have an ROI, release of information template, available in Athena for printing, and that can be found under the individual module under the templates drop-down icon. So just for those that may not be aware, we do have an ROI option to print in Athena. Now, DOC Standard 2A Pro 107 requires community corrections agencies have a team meeting with treatment providers and clients at least one time per month. It's been established that this meeting may also be completed using a progress report from the treatment provider that the supervision officer shall review and, of course, then save in the client's file. We have here the supervision officer may initiate the client placement agreement, or CPA. I know there's been a lot of talk today of who does it. Fortunately, there's no hard and fast rule. How I would handle things is, as the CSO, I would initiate that, considering I have all of those identifiers and demographics that I need in order to fill out that form. Makes the most sense there. As it says on the slide, communication is key in order for this process to be successful. So communicate and please document. For the absconded client, supervision officers are required to notify the treatment provider within 2 working days of determining that a client has absconded from supervision. This communication may occur via phone or email, and documentation, of course, should be entered in Athena. Likewise, treatment providers are required to notify the supervision officer within 2 working days if a client fails to report for a scheduled treatment without notice. This communication may occur again by phone or email, and documentation of notification should be recorded in the client's case file. Treatment providers who continue to provide treatment to clients after notification of a client absconding may not receive payment for those services. Senate Bill 123 providers must be approved first by the Sentencing Commission, and they are only added to Athena by DOC. So once KDOC receives notification from the Sentencing Commission of, hey, this is an approved provider, then I have an awesome team member, Tanis, who goes in and enters that information in Athena. Athena users may refer to the Senate Bill 123 approved providers view. That's available in the Senate Bill Treatment Providers Dashboard of Athena to view approved providers. And I think earlier in the day, someone had mentioned that also the Sentencing Commission website provides a statewide list of providers that's organized by city and also details their modalities per provider location. So I'll end with this. You may all be wondering how the Sentencing Commission and treatment providers determine when a client is eligible to receive Senate bill funded treatment. And this is where data sharing comes into play. And it also highlights the importance of supervision officers entering this data in Athena. So KDOC sends Athena data files to the Sentencing Commission on a weekly basis. The Sentencing Commission then takes DOC's Athena file and combines it with their own data. This newly combined data is then sent to Carillon every Wednesday morning to determine eligibility for providers to bill for Senate bill treatment services. If the client information is not in Carillon, payment will be denied or delayed. This is why you may receive a call from the Sentencing Commission if there are issues when attempting to process payment eligibility, as data between Athena, the Sentencing Commission, and Carillon all must match in order for payment to be effectively processed. It is the supervision officer's responsibility to ensure that all relevant data, including the KBI number, is entered and current in Athena. Without the KBI number on file, payment will be denied or delayed.
Thank you, Jessica.
Trish, before you go over the website, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to know, we got a question in the chat that I think would probably be good for Jessica and or Spence to answer.
Okay.
With court services doing the pre-sentence stuff, court services does not use Athena. Does the pre-sentence entered into Athena only apply to those agencies that have ISO/CSO combined positions? And then it looks like maybe.
So once community corrections is provided with the pre-sentence information of that client and they're holding that case until they're sentenced, community corrections would enter it into Athena at that point.
Thank you. And it looks like Chanel put that answer in the chat as well. So thank you. Thank you to both of you for answering that question.
Yep. Thank you, Chanel, very much.
Is there any other questions that anybody might have that you'd like to ask or confused about that before I talk about our website?
Derek did say in response, CC community corrections only gets the info after sentencing.
And that's Sedgwick County. Community Corrections.
Yeah, that varies across the state. Another wonderful thing about the pros and cons of folks doing it differently across the state. So
Yeah,
sounds like
hopefully,
that's what
hopefully as we move forward, community corrections will always get the PSI. And then we'll know, before sentencing if they qualify for Senate Bill 123 with the SASE. So hopefully we can get that straightened up there.
Well, okay. Any other questions? I'm just going to briefly go over the website. Actually, okay. So this is what our website banner looks like. And when we go into this, oh, wait a minute, there's another question. Mavis, what you got? Our court services always sends us the PSIs before sentencing. Oh, there are more questions. Okay, so let's stop before we go to the website. Let's using the Athena. Apply for providers conducting the assessments.
No, providers don't have access to Athena, so there's no need for a provider to worry about anything in Athena. The only thing you would need to know as a provider is if for some reason your client isn't showing up in Provider Connect. It could be a result of something in Athena, but you don't need to worry about that. You just need to know if they're not showing up. Email Trish, reach out to the CSO or ISO that made the referral, and then, collectively they can kind of look into Athena and see if that's what's causing the issue.
Okay, do you want me to, any other questions? Okay, I'm just going to briefly run over our website where there's a lot of helpful information. Let me share here. Bear with me, where'd it go? Oh, goodness sakes. Hold on. I love technology. Bear with me, people. Come on, where is it? Maybe I need to just shut down my. There we go. Can you see that? Yes. Okay, cool. All right, this is our new website, and it looks completely different than what it did before, but we're getting used to it and learning how to put things on it. But really just, I encourage you to go to our website and just kind of browse through it. There's a lot of good information. The one thing I do want to point out, we also have, calendar of events. Down here at the very bottom, on the homepage, it says stay informed. I encourage you to sign up because sometimes we will do like an email blast and let you know upcoming things, changes, important stuff. And you may not find it important at all, but it's better to get it than not. So if you sign up, you can also see other options available, but give them your email address. And then once you sign up, you will receive an email, and then you will have to acknowledge that email in order for it to actually kick in to put you on this email list. So I encourage you to do that. But up here at the very top, you'll see the SB 123/RAFT page. And our eligibility page just basically covers basic statutes. And it provides the flow chart that we have with that placement criteria flow chart also. Gives our information. Then if you go to the providers page, here's where that statewide approved providers list is. And then questions and billings regarding Carillon, staff certification details, agency certification details, and then our newest addition would be our certified provider auditing policy. So if you're curious about what that looks like, you're welcome to read it. It is now available. And then on our forms page, here's where that approved treatment provider modalities and cost caps thing is. Here are all of our forms. I try to let you know the latest version that we have. And I think we're going to try and figure out a way when we do update a form, if you sign up for that email blast, maybe that'll be a good way for us to, let you know, hey, we've got a new form out there, it's got an effective date of such and such, but I know some people don't know that we've got a new client placement agreement out there, for instance, or maybe we've adjusted the assessment summary form or whatever. So we try not to do that very often, but if we do, we want to let you know somehow. So the offender reimbursement remittance form, that is, of course, for those offenders that are still paying their court fees. This is where you would get the remittance form that you would send in with money orders or cashier's checks or the bank checks. And that, of course, is for anyone that was sentenced prior to July 1st of this year. For those court services and community corrections agencies that are conducting those SASSIs, keep in mind we do reimburse those $5 per SASSI, but we do have, some requirements. So here's the invoice, a little bit of directions, and then the summary form that will need to be emailed to us, and then we will submit that for payment. So that's a thought if you haven't been doing that. Then the next page is the RAFT. This basically talks about our RAFT program, what you need to know about it, the modalities again, and then here are the forms for those, and they will have a green dot versus the red star. And our training page will basically, you guys obviously know this page. Well, a lot of the treatment providers do. And this is where the conference was. But here's some of our previous conferences that we've had. And this is where we will actually post this particular conference with all of the different presentations we've had through the day and the audio. I don't think it'll be a video, it'll be an audio. So this is where you will find that. Okay, I do see there's some chats in there. Do we need to cover something or have you answered them?
Well, I was working on it. So there was kind of a question about absconding, and, somebody made the point that most agencies can't deem a client an absconder until 30 days of not reporting, re-engagement efforts being done, an affidavit being filed, and the state proving or showing evidence that the client has truly absconded. If they are high risk to qualify for SB 123, how would they only miss 2 appointments? So we were kind of having a discussion, and I think the answer is, well, they may have very well missed more than 2 appointments, obviously, by that point, but they're not necessarily going to be discharged from treatment. So, which was part of the initial question: wouldn't the treatment providers be discharging the client before the absconder status? So the answer is no, they wouldn't necessarily be discharged from treatment, but this is why it's really important for the treatment providers and supervision officers to be in communication when something like this happens. So they just need to be in communication. The treatment provider might not discharge them because maybe the client re-engage, they get declared an absconder, they might re-engage in 5 or 6 days, and then they can just hop right back in with the treatment provider. It's important for providers to know that once they've been declared an absconder, they cannot be providing services. We won't pay them for services basically that have been delivered after they've been declared an absconder. But that's why the communication piece is really important. So I don't know if that helps answer the question, or if maybe Jessica or Spence have any other kind of anything to add to that.
No, I think you're right on, Elliot. Communication is key. And I think that was a general statement. You know, we can't make standards for every potential scenario under the sun. So that's why if a treatment provider notices, oh, so-and-so has missed treatment for 1 day, that's when you send an email and communicate with the supervision officer and vice versa.
Okay. Elliot, do you want me to just show our contact information or do you want me to skip that?
We have a question in the chat that I just want to talk through. So the question is, when an SB 123 client reoffends and is incarcerated, can they receive outpatient services while incarcerated prior to revocation or new court? So I guess my question would be, do we have a treatment provider that's providing services to people who are incarcerated?
I do.
Okay.
I just didn't, we're not, I know on our mental health side that they can't do any billing for that, but I see people in our jail for assessments, evaluations, and if they haven't had a revocation yet, we do provide some outpatient services just to provide support and stabilization.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, my answer would be yes, because they're not absconded. We know where they are. And their treatment clock is still running at that time. So if you're there and able to provide the services, then yes, we might have to work out with Caroline exactly how you would bill for those.
I have been doing that, and I just bill them as individual services because it's still based on their care plan, and we keep their care plans updated. So, but I wanted to make sure I wasn't doing something wrong because, like I said, our mental health side can't do that.
Well, I think the issue is when they've absconded, we don't want clients kind of hiding out from their supervision officer, but still going to treatment.
Well, some of them have absconded and they're in jail because of that failure to appear. So that's why I said absconded or a different offense. Yeah. So, but anyway, thank you very much.
Yeah. So that's my answer. Again, I'll ask Jessica and Spence if you guys have any other kind of input or not, but from our perspective, okay, thumbs up. So we're good to go. Good. Okay, sorry, Trish, go ahead.
No, that's fine. You want me to go ahead and show our information?
Yeah, just one more time. Let's put it up there just in case.
All right, let me share my screen.
Thank you.
Sure. Can y'all see that?
We got the website guidance up there.
Yeah, let me